Okay, so if everyone can hear us, that's great. Welcome to tonight's town hall on October the 9th. I'd be remiss if I didn't start off tonight's meeting with a welcome and a land acknowledgement. And in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. I'd encourage you all to become curious about the traditional keepers of our land and their stories, as it is Canadian history and it is their history as well. So important that we acknowledge that, and important that we are curious about those pieces of our past. CMSA's mission and vision is about we're dedicated to working with our member organizations to develop, organize, and promote opportunities which will allow all participants to achieve their full potential in a safe, meaningful, and inclusive environment. So whether we are coaches, whether we are players, administrators, referees, spectators, fans, parents, etc., we want this to be a safe and meaningful and inclusive environment for everyone, and that we can help to promote opportunities for you as well. And really our vision is around elevating and uniting our community through soccer. And we've made massive cultural steps and cultural improvements in the last probably 5 years. And we're looking forward to continuing that momentum as we build into the indoor 25-26 season. Our values are around leadership, stewardship, integrity, excellence, and communication. And we fully expect people to hold us accountable to those. And when we aren't exhibiting those values, to call us out on that, because these are pieces that we believe firmly in are important to guiding the game forward in a responsible manner, and to doing it with high standards as well, because we want this to be the best game that it can be, and we don't want to be stopping until it is. As you might be able to see on your screen, my name is Jordan Stewart. I'm the CMSA Technical Manager currently, and some of my previous roles and endeavors have had me coaching players from U4 all the way through to university age players. And prior to working with CMSA, I worked with Alberta Soccer as their regional coach for Southern Alberta. And as part of that role as well, I was the Alberta Recs director as well. So my portfolio predominantly was around player development. So all 100,000 and change players in Alberta, that was my responsibility. So you can imagine the kind of scale that was. I was supporting many districts in Southern Alberta with their strategies to try and develop the game and build the game locally within their area, and was also involved with coach education up to a B license level here in the province. So have seen the province kind of top to bottom, east to west, and have traveled extensively through it and been involved with some projects with Canada Soccer as well. I've got experience working in the grassroots game, which if we're coaching or if we're a fan or a parent, that's what we exist in. Even at U19, this is still grassroots amateur youth soccer. I used to work with a professional club in Edmonton with the U18s at FC Edmonton, which unfortunately is no longer a club and is no longer with us. As I've mentioned, Alberta Soccer, the youth national team development system, so through the Recs with U15, U17, and U20 camps, colleges and universities within community outreach programs, and also now locally here within CMSA. I want to make sure that if anyone on the call is new to soccer, or if there's any ambiguity around this with what does CMSA do, what does your club do, that we clear that up and that we have some clarity around that. So in terms of a schedule, we organize all the matches in your season schedule. And a bit later on, I'm going to get into how we actually build that schedule and what that process looks like. So there's a firm understanding of what goes into that. Your club is the one who organizes your child's team practices and training sessions. Okay, so if you haven't received that schedule yet, we haven't received it either, and we will not be receiving that. That is purely a club function, and I would be encouraging you to reach out to your club to find that information. In terms of team placement, we work with our member clubs to put all of the teams in the most fitting division for them. Again, I'm going to work through what that process looks like in a little bit, but your club is responsible for placing your child on a team within their club. So a team that will be at an appropriate level for them, that will provide the right challenge, that will provide meaningful competition for them. And I want to be really clear that everyone looks at going from a higher tier to a lower tier as a demotion. It's not, because development isn't in this straight line linear journey. It's up, down, left, right, backwards, forward, side to side. And sometimes it's important to maybe take a step into a different tier to then springboard yourself forward. There's absolutely no research that says that, kids that are playing at U14 tier 1 will end up being pros or will end up being U19 tier 1. There's no research that suggests that. So every child's path is different, and I want you to really embrace that path, that journey, even with the hurdles, the speed bumps, the bruises that might come with it as well. In terms of coaching, CMSA puts coaches through formal coach training, which I recognize some names on this call have been through, and I've had the pleasure of interacting with, both at a coaching course, but also at the side of a pitch. And it's your club's job to find, retain, and develop its coaches. So if you're a coach on this call right now, your club should be working with you to help improve you, to give you tools that's going to improve not only your delivery as a coach, but also maybe you as a person and as a leader. In terms of jerseys, the only jerseys CMSA provides is the U7 to U9 Grassroots League jerseys, sponsored by Shane Holmes, for the clubs that order them. Okay, so if you've got a younger child in your house, you may or may not be getting one of those Shane Holmes jerseys, depending on if your club has ordered it or not. For the majority, probably, of people on this call, your club has the jerseys for you. Okay, so again, you're going to have to contact them if you don't have any yet, and really try and dig down into that process with them. I'd like to make sure that we mention as well what the Canada Soccer player pathway looks like. And pathway suggests that it's very linear, that you put one foot in front of the other on the trail and you eventually end up at a beautiful lookout, or you end up back home, or you end up at the destination that you want to go to. This is more of a player journey, okay, where it's fluid, and you'll see that lots of players will move in and out of many of these boxes throughout their career and throughout their soccer journey. CMSA operated stages 1, 2, 3, and 7. Now you're probably thinking, what happened to 4, 5, and 6? Well, 4, 5, and 6 are operated by the APDL and Alberta Soccer in terms of our train-to-train stage, and then flowing through into learn to compete and up through train to compete and train to win stages of long-term player development. You'll see as well some of the programming that operates at each of these. So you've got Rex and Whitecaps programs there. As they flow up, you'll move into U18 Cavalry programs. You'll move into MLS Residency and MLS Academy programs with the Whitecaps, or youth national teams. And if you're fortunate enough to have a child that flows upwards even still, there's professional football in this city in terms of the Calgary Wild. The Vancouver Whitecaps have pathways into this city and programs to talent ID and talent development, and also Cavalry, which is our local CPL club on the men's side. There's also senior national teams in terms of men's and women's that would be available there. Obviously, that's a very, very finite portion of players that would be flowing up into that stage 6 box. For the vast majority of players, we're looking for them to be soccer for life, right? So they're enjoying the game throughout their life, and they're like me, who's chipping away at an over 35 league that's flown up into a soccer for life, either competitive or community, in their senior years through CUSA, Calgary Women's, or the Alberta Major Soccer League. Within their youth, there's kind of two brackets, if you will, which would be soccer for life competitive and soccer for life community, which CMSA offers leagues for both of those endeavors and those interests. You might also have a child that flows into stage 5, which are really university and college leagues and some what would be called almost pro-am or semi-pro leagues in terms of League One, in terms of UWS, and potentially USL2 as well. Lots of these are all offered locally, okay, especially U Sports in college. And then there is obviously the NCAA that players can go down into the States for. I had referenced long-term player development previously in that player journey. Long-term player development was originally released in 2008 and 2009, and it gave a framework for sport entities and national governing bodies and how to develop players in terms of a format that would be suitable for them to both enjoy the game but progress through the game as well. And it broke things down in a staged model. And you'll notice that there are differences in terms of female and male ages. From here, stage 4, right? Stage 5, stage 6, and stage 7 were all rinsed out. So from stage 1, active start, until stage 7, you're active for life and have soccer for life. Okay? This framework has gone through a revision once to produce the Canada Soccer Grassroots Standards. And these grassroots standards have actually gone through another revision, and it's what you're looking at on your screen now. This provided the framework to get the players into the U14 to U19 ages. Okay, so while we won't be touching on this in particular tonight, I want to make sure that we acknowledge that there is a framework that CMSA is aligning to associated with best practice research. And this is where we are endeavoring to get to. We're not quite there yet entirely, but we are working our backsides off to make sure that we get there. Okay? And so what about all of that piece, the frameworks, the best practice? Well, we take these pieces and then we look to implement that locally through our CMSA program handbook. And our program handbook is what we develop for our clubs to base their registration package off of. When the club is going to open up that registration package, they are basing all of the dates, the formats, etc. off of this. And so what I would encourage you to do is encourage you to find this on our website. It's under leagues and then rules and forms. And I would ask you to maybe consider going through that quickly with the age group that your child is in. Then reflect and compare that against what your club's registration package actually looked like and what it advertised. And I'd ask you, is it accurate and is it aligned? Okay? And if you ever have questions, I would say a handy resource for you is to go back and to find the program handbook again. It's always in that same spot for the upcoming season. And it's a very, very valuable resource for you. Many of you would have probably seen or heard of club licensing by now. What club licensing is this is a standards-based evaluation model by Canada Soccer to assure people that the entity that they've joined is a reputable club and that it is a part of a sanctioned governing body, and that there are some standards that those clubs have met. There's 4 stages of club licensing throughout the country, with the first being QSP, Quality Soccer Provider, or locally in Alberta, what it's called as SQS, the Standards for Quality Soccer. And that's the first stage of the licensing. Clubs then move through to an MA1 and MA2 level in terms of their club license, and then end up at the National Youth Club license holder. The National Youth Club license holders have satisfied 140 plus criteria or have action plans to satisfy those criteria as well, to really offer thorough soccer programming. SQS holders satisfy 32 criteria, and they as well will maybe have action plans associated with some of those criteria. What I'm not saying is that one level is better than the other, okay? What I would encourage you to do is, if your child is loving the game, enjoys their teammates, and loves their coach, you have absolutely zero reason to move clubs and to find something else, okay? The National Youth Club license holders have certain advantages compared to SQS, and it's things like MLS homegrown player rules, where players that are in those clubs will have MLS homegrown status and will be available as a non-domestic player, or sorry, a non-import player. So they're available as a domestic player to any of the MLS clubs. Okay. So hypothetically, a player from Mackenzie United could go down to Orlando City, a male player, I should say, could go down to Orlando City and not be considered a designated player or an imported player. Okay. So while that would be incredibly rare, this is one of the advantages of club licensing, and it's also brought about a certain amount of standardization and alignment through the soccer system and enabled Canada Soccer to be auditing and really enforcing standards that they would expect their clubs to be operating with. How, though, has SQS and club licensing impacted us locally? Well, one of the key pieces it's impacted is around the coaching standards. And if anyone here is coaching this season, you'll know that there's work to do in terms of the safe sport requirements and the technical training requirements that we want of our coaches. Some people are going to say, Jordan, it's a lot of work. And I'm going to completely agree with you. But what we don't want is we don't want to have low standards for our coaches and for our players in terms of the environment. We want to make sure that even if you are a volunteer coach, that we're still taking it as professionally as we can and we're doing as best a job as we possibly can. So you'll notice two levels there on your screen, the modified safe sport roster and the full safe sport roster. The modified safe sport roster is definitely a dialed back version. And when we built out where the line was going to be in terms of U11 or U12 or U10, or is it at a certain tier, we involved our clubs and we asked them the question of where they felt like the coach training needed to change and needed to shift into a full safe sport roster requirement. And they collectively agreed to U12 and plus. So this has been in place for about 3.5, almost 4 years now. And so what are those requirements? Well, those requirements are things like a police clearance, okay, with vulnerable sector search so that you're able to work with minors. Then you're doing Respect in Sport Activity Leader, which is a course that's addressing bad behaviors, BAHD behaviors, bullying, abuse, harassment, discrimination, and eliminating and reducing them from sport. Coaches would then flow down through, in terms of this age and stage, through a Soccer for Life, both theory and practical course, and then come down and complete all of these safe sport modules down here. Make Ethical Decision is around building out a 6-step decision-making framework that coaches can use when they're faced with ethical dilemmas in their coaching. The Making Headway module is around best practice in concussion prevention and recovery, and is literally written by the people who are local as well that wrote the international consensus statement on concussion. So genuine world-class and world-leading education for our coaches that we're requiring of them to complete. Then you have the emergency action planning, which is around what do we do as coaches when an emergency happens? Whose role is it to call? Whose role is it to direct the ambulance in? Whose role is it to tend to the injury? And then we have the rule of two, which is around ensuring that there aren't vulnerable interactions between adults and minors within sport. So that's about eliminating closed-door conversations one-on-one with a minor. That's about having interruptible, justifiable, and open meetings with minors that even in a virtual sense, we're not texting minors or slipping into DMs, etc., of minors as coaches. That we are involving an assistant coach that's trained and screened. We're involving the parent and guardian in these communications, and that we are acting in the safest possible manner for both ourselves, but also for the participant. So key safe sport pieces that we are very unrelenting on this year and this season. And so what we had previously is this in CMSA. We would ask coaches to only submit a police clearance and do a respect in sport course. Since club licensing has come along, this is what the expectation is now. And you'll see even their C license or C diploma now is recommended coach training, right? We're recommending that coaches go through a C diploma and that they really look to improve themselves to then improve the delivery. And Melissa just sent me a quick text, so I'll hop into the chat and look to answer that question. I'm assuming it is this one. How can we start to join pro teams because I want my son to play for the Vancouver Whitecaps? Well, I mean, we all want what's best for our kids. What I would say is that in terms of a player pathway piece, because this is really what you're talking to there, you'll notice here that the predominant amount of the let me see if I can get the scribbles off. You'll see that the predominant amount of the scouting comes from APDL environments. That's not to say that the Vancouver Whitecaps aren't looking for players in a tier 1, in a tier 2, in a tier 3 environment, because they've held combines in the northeast of Calgary that they invited the top players that are club recommended to that combine, regardless of the tier that they're playing in. The rest of the clubs that do have an APDL license and a National Youth Club license would typically be filtering those players up into their top teams, or be recommending those players that might not be at that level or might not have the means to compete at that level to then go into that program and that trial process as well. The Whitecaps program locally runs from U15 down. So this year within that environment, it's 2011s and 2012s. In terms of older ages that might be looking to pursue a professional career, Cavalry have introduced a U18 group that is just brand new. And the Vancouver Whitecaps offer what's called a Caps to College program, where they're still looking for late blooming players and players that are maturing later on in their youth career, with a primary focus on placing them into colleges and universities and supporting that transition, but also keeping track of talent within the city. And a good example of that is Sydney Wahuda, that has come through the Blizzard and New Frontier Club, did not make a first kind of go over the mountain and stick in Vancouver when he was 14, 15, but kept at it, was in a Caps to College program, and ended up moving over full-time into the MLS Academy when he was 17. You can look up Sydney if you want. He's currently playing in the MLS for Colorado. He had a fantastic NCAA career as well, and things took off for Sydney at a later rate. And this is why this image doesn't look like a straight line pathway. There's players that go from here to here, up to here, over to here. They transition into different environments depending on their growth as a player and what they are actually about. So in terms of how you get into a Whitecaps program, well, that's really about the club recommending the players into those programs and that process there. It looks like there might be a couple of other questions there. There are, let me see here. Recently told C license referred to Alberta Soccer. Yes, if we jump back forward, and thanks everyone for bearing with us here, that if we talk about a C diploma, C diploma is ran by the provinces. It's a CONCACAF C diploma, but it's delivered by the provinces. So Alberta Soccer is the one who organizes that, facilitates that, and does everything around the C diploma. B diploma, A diploma, and the in works right now Pro diploma are all delivered by Canada Soccer. So the grassroots coach education courses, which you'll see on your screen now, those are delivered locally through the district and through the province. Okay, and then the C diploma is delivered at a provincial level. So Calgary Minor Soccer doesn't have any involvement within a C diploma, other than if they ask me to help facilitate the course, then that would be the only involvement that we would really have in that. On your screen, you're going to see loads of the on-field coach education dates. If you need to be completing a Soccer for Life course, you'll see that it's on your screen. And you'll also see that we've added a ton more courses this indoor, okay? Because we really want to help coaches get better, and we want to make these times as accessible as we possibly can. Because these coaching standards that we have are imperative to improving the game. We know that according to all of our season-ending data, that the coach is right at the center of the wheel in terms of player experience and player development. Okay, so that directly affects player retention throughout soccer. So SQS has made it essentially mandatory that all coaches complete the required training. Okay, whether you're a head coach or assistant coach, it doesn't matter, because what used to happen is a club TD would finish up the training and put themselves on every single roster, and that would make the roster eligible. Well, we know that a club TD that has 85 teams is not going to be at 7 different fields at the exact same time when their games are. So this isn't about doing what's easy anymore. This is about doing what's right. And really, the club's willingness to adhere to these basic standards are going to determine their longevity within soccer. And so what are we doing about it in terms of CMSA? Well, we are not issuing any sort of coaching cards unless the criteria is met that's outlined in this blue box when the coach comes to see us. Because the coaching card and the team official ID is step 6 in a 6-step process. But everyone was treating it as step 2, where essentially you register with a club as step 1, step 2, you go get your card, and then you worry about all the training. And we're saying, no. We want coaches trained, then they're eligible, then they're getting an ID card. Okay? We also offer some additional coach education in an informal basis. We try to run webinars as frequently as we can when we get some guests that are willing to help out, largely pro bono and on a free basis. So I call in a lot of favors to get people to put on a webinar and put on a presentation. We call that the Technical Culture Series, and I want to highlight 2 that have been reasonably recent. Martin Vlick, who spent some time in Calgary at Calgary West FC, he was the head of coach education for the Czech FA and has now moved into the Slavia Praha club as their director of coaching and methodology. He was explaining to coaches around ecological dynamics, constraints-led approach, and really a modern way of delivering coaching that is going to help create better decision makers within the game. The question that was in the chat around pro clubs and professional football, this would be the series I would recommend for you. It was with Chris McKaig, who at the time was a FIFA licensed agent, one of, I think, 11 that were in the country. And he's since transitioned out of being an agent to working for the Vancouver Whitecaps here and running their programming here in Calgary. This webinar in particular will answer all of your questions from a parent and a player lens on how signings work, on how working with agents work, on what clubs are looking for, on when you can move over to Europe or South America, and really trying to dig in and understand the FIFA statutes and transfers of players, because this is all governed. So when you get approached on the sideline by someone who says, oh, your child's quite good, let me take them over to Portugal or Spain or England or Italy or Colombia or Honduras or whatever for a trial, you'll have the necessary information to go, no. They can't actually go over there and sign. They can go over there and sample the environment, and the club can look to track them. But a player cannot change confederations under the age of 18 unless their parents move over to that country for non-football reasons. So when we talk about these nuances, we're trying to safeguard and protect parents and players from predatory people that do exist out there, that don't have players' best interests in mind. And it acts as borderline human trafficking at times. So you need to be aware of these pieces, and there are informational resources that we're producing that are going to help you be aware. Okay, I'm going to jump back in the chat for just 1 second. There are some comments around coaches are misleading parents by discouraging talented players from joining APDL and unfairly placing them on do not release lists, not for any valid reasons, but simply to keep them within their club. Well, the do not release list is clearly outlined within our rules. So if they're placed on that list, you can obviously see probably the reasons why they're on that list. In terms of, discouraging players from joining another club, it's an interesting philosophy for me, because it's our job as coaches to prepare the player for the next level and to make ourselves redundant. So if we're not doing that in an effective manner and we're trying to hoard players or keep players back, this isn't about our journey. And if we're trying to keep players and not help them progress their careers and their lives, shame on them. You're coaching for the wrong reasons at the end of the day. So it's really, really important that, again, parents are equipped with good information. And this is where the Technical Culture Series, this is where some of the information that we're trying to produce, nights like tonight, allow for us to have these discussions and allow for us to give you recommendations as well. There's lots of nuance in terms of why a coach might say, no, don't go there, or whatever. At the end of the day, this is the player's journey, and the player needs to make choices. They are not signed to professional contracts. They're not professionals at all. So the coach doesn't own them. The club doesn't own them. And in fact, when we start using language around my players, then we start the grooming process. And there's a power dynamic there that is not appropriate. These are players that choose to play for you, that choose to represent your club. These are players that you have the privilege as a coach to work with and to help shape and to help influence and to help grow their life. So really, really nuanced language change, but a very, very important language change to be aware of, and really dig into that and consider how we speak and what we are actually here for. I guess that kind of segues a little bit into Coach's Code of Conduct. And I'm not going to go through all 12 points here, but this is available within our rules and regs in the team officials handbook as well, that everyone gets sent out that is a team official, that they should be reviewing. Okay? This is a really important piece that people need to be aware of. We also have parent codes of conduct, and we also have player codes of conduct. So to review these, you can find them within our rules, you can find them on our website, and you can also review this recording on YouTube when it gets posted tomorrow morning. To help us with some of that codes of conduct, if we're starting to get a bit out of hand, we have field marshals at the field. And while this is largely a volunteer position, this is a vital position within the culture of the game, especially here in Calgary. And I've been sat on sidelines in street clothes, watching games, watching players, watching coaches, and I hear parents have a laugh about this, and it's discouraging and it's very disrespectful, if I'm honest. The field marshal's there to be a representative on behalf of the referee and try and control the climate on the other side of the field. Because if we had great spectators that were positive and supportive and loving and caring, this wouldn't even be an issue. But there are bad apples out there, and we do need to support our referees to keep them safe. So the orange armband is worn. And I've heard people laugh about it, like, oh, yeah, the field marshal should go say something. No, like, this is a serious piece, because we're not tolerating the abuse towards referees or the abuse towards coaches or the abuse towards players. It's really simple. There's just no room for it. So I'll get into some of the pieces that we have in place that we're trying to deal with some of these pieces, but really it's around, can we exhibit positive sporting behaviors, and can we just cheer and not critique? Can we approach the game with love and encouragement for our child and focus on encouraging them rather than critiquing referees or thinking, oh, that coach is a muppet, or, oh, that kid just tackled him too hard, he's aggressive or violent or a bully or something like that. Like, focus on our children and loving them and supporting them, encouraging them. Typically, these field marshals should be involved in a pregame chat with referees, the coaches, and the captains. And this is in an effort to try and humanize people and connect people, because the referee needs to know who they're looking for in the stands if things aren't going well. And so I know that this doesn't happen on a regular basis, but this is a process that we're encouraging referees to be going through, to say to everyone, like, listen, this is how I'm going to referee today. I am such and such. I'm learning. I'm going to make mistakes. Coaches, my expectation of you is this. Players, this is what you can expect from me on the field. And I don't want to be yelled at all from the stands. So as soon as there is, we're stopping the game and those people are gone. That kind of a pregame chat should be happening. And I'm encouraged by the turnout tonight, because we are going to be the ones who are champions on the sidelines this season. We are going to... Oh, one sec. I guess presentation decided to stop. Sorry, everyone. Thanks, Melissa. Troubleshooting. There we go. So as I was speaking to field marshal piece, okay, there's the slide that was up. We talked about the codes of conduct. I'll just rewind there for a second. Okay, you can find those on our website. And I was saying that we are going to be the champions. Okay, we are the champions that are on this call about what's an acceptable behavior and what's an acceptable standard of conduct and what's not acceptable. Because if we start to lower ourselves to wrestling with pigs, I think lots of people on this call have heard me use this analogy. Well, we just get covered in you know what, and the pig actually loves it. So can we elevate ourselves? Can we be the standard? Can we set a positive sporting culture? And can we have a great environment that these kids are growing up through and learning and developing and making mistakes and crashing and failing and having success? That's the beautiful part about sport and about this game. And two pieces that we're utilizing and attempting in terms of an initiative to try and positively affect the sporting cultures around EmpowerHER and our referee program. So I'll start with EmpowerHER. Throughout the last about 12 to 16 months, we've launched She Can Ref, which is a referee development program for women only, where women instructors and mentors are helping to develop our female referee crop in a safe environment that women feel comfortable sharing and opening up in. We're also doing increased levels of female-only entry-level courses, and our junior officiating program, that is our referee training program within the high schools, actually has a 50-50 split in terms of male-female representation that's coming through that program. So we're seeing this groundswell of young women who want to be referees and honestly are phenomenal referees as well. We have female-only coaching courses that we have launched as well for this coming indoor season, that if they're not on our Demosphere site, they will be very shortly in the coming probably day or so. And we're trying to incorporate player activities as well in terms of honoring International Women's Day in 2026 with a Free Soccer Friday that's girls only. We know that there is still lots of work to be done here. We know that there is a huge amount of lift and effort here. So if you are interested in contributing to bettering the game for women and girls, if you are an idea person and an idea generator that's got some thoughts around maybe what could be done, feel free to reach out, because we are open to communication and conversation, and we want to be inclusive and transparent of these ideas, because we don't have all the answers. And if someone's got a brilliant idea, we would love to connect with you and begin to build out a better sporting culture and a better soccer culture for our women and girls. In terms of the referee piece, we are bringing in mass amounts of referees, 300-ish per season. And you'll notice that we will have 2 officials at the games throughout the winter in the indoor season. We'll have a center official, and then we'll have 1 second official. And I use the term second official really deliberately, because they're not an assistant referee. They don't have a flag and they don't run the line. And they're also not a 4th official. They don't just stand there with the sub board and show you who's being substituted. So they're a second official is what we call them, okay? They're there to assist the middle referee and the center official. And they are there to help to manage the benches and also speed up administrative processes as well. We had a 99.96% coverage rate last indoor. And so we're looking to maintain that kind of a standard for the upcoming year. I want to talk briefly about Project Ref with KidSport, because if you have a child that's receiving KidSport funding in your family, they're actually eligible to go through Project Ref, where KidSport will pay for all of their referee training, all of their upgrading training when they're ready for that as well, supply them with their full kit, and essentially get them ready for their part-time job in refereeing. So they're giving them career training completely for free. And we owe a massive round of applause to KidSport for stepping up once again and for helping us to develop great communicators, great conflict resolution artists, fantastic young people with confidence, fantastic people that are able to make decisions in pressurized situations. And honestly, if you're an employer and you see someone was a referee, I have not met a referee that isn't professional in the way that they go about presenting themselves, that isn't diligent and communicates well and is a leader. They're phenomenal people, and refereeing is giving these kids a great life experience. And we can make it even better. And so our teal shirt campaign is that acknowledgement that some of these referees are brand new. And we give them the teal shirt to wear with the big first-year referee on the back side of it, to acknowledge that these people are brand new, that they're going to make mistakes, that they're learning, and that the game that you're a part of and that they're a part of might be their first ever game. Now, we don't expect a ton of center officials to be in this situation in the U14 to U19 leagues, but you need an awareness about this because they will be popping up at your games. And if we are abusing and harassing and discriminating against and making it really difficult for these young referees, guess what happens? They just don't come back. And then we don't get better referees, because we hear the cryouts from the clubs and the coaches and the parents that you want better referees. So do we. We want the best referees in Canada to be coming from Calgary. And so we're wrapping up that teal shirt campaign with mentorship and giving our mentors a framework that's aligned to best practice to be working with these people with, so that they're out supporting their development and it's about them, that new referee and their progress. We're putting on monthly education sessions so that these referees have access to developmental opportunities and education, barrier-free and free of charge. They either can attend online or in person, because we want them to get better. We don't want to have a poor standard of refereeing. We're actively trying to address this. And then lastly is around the zero tolerance policy, where it's reportable by any person and we're just not tolerating abuse anymore. It gives the referees some additional powers in terms of timeouts in matches where they can go, whoof, getting a bit too spicy, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to sit down and we're going to wait until the climate changes. They can also completely abandon matches if they want and they feel like they're being abused, and the matches don't get replayed. There's no points awarded. So who loses out? Well, the coaches do, the parents do, the players do. So I'd ask you to really think about your conduct if you know that someone can just say, woof, game's done, no score recorded, I'm out of here, see you later. I would hate to be the one who's guilty of that and has cost that hour or hour and a half for all of the children who have joined that match on that day. So the key takeaways here is, if you're a coach, just coach. Focus on your team. I've never seen referees change their minds, so just don't worry about it. Don't dispute it. Don't try to influence them. Don't get in their ear. Let them do their job. If you're a parent, cheer, don't abuse. And if you're a player, play, don't bother dissenting, right? If in the very rare occasion there's a referee no-show where we don't have referees, the games get picked up. Sometimes a car breaks down, a family emergency, and we cannot find someone to fill in. Well, here's what happens. The game still gets played, and both teams have got to agree on who's going to be refereeing the games. You can look to split the game into two halves, or you can look to go and ask some parents and siblings if they are a trained referee, because then they get paid as well, and they can sign the game sheet and they can fill that out. Okay, so that's what happens if and when there are no shows. Melissa just notified me that there's a question about some scouting and such. There's cheers, Robert. We're going to be talking about age exemptions, so that's great. Will we be organizing a presentation like last year when the Whitecaps representative came to educate the coaches about how the scouting process works? We organize those pieces when some of those representatives are coming into town. So I know Rich Fagan, the technical director at the Vancouver Whitecaps, will be out in early November. So we're looking to put on another session with Rich and incorporate his knowledge into coaches here locally. We're also looking at other coach development opportunities into the new year and next summer in terms of trying to bring in some literal world-renowned guests and speakers to help to upskill our local coaches here. So we're working through that. Rich would give you the information the same way that Chris would, or myself. That locally, Chris is the representative for the Whitecaps, who's out at games, who's working with players, who's doing the talent ID and talent development here for them, and is that direct conduit back to Vancouver that Rich is in constant communication with to say, you know, who are the players that are doing really well? Who do we need to come have a look at? And do you have any film of them, etc. So that's how that scouting process works, and I'm sure Rich and Chris can build that out a little bit more for you. But that would be a Coles Notes piece around that. In terms of upcoming tournaments and events, if you've got younger kids in your family, well, there is the Soccer Santa Saturday on December 13th for the Grassroots League, the U7s to 9s. And we do have our Family Day Classic back again over the Family Day long weekend. And then again, it's not on the slide, but there is March Mayhem as well that's returning this year. That's kind of right after the indoor season. So while it's not on the slide, it's just an awareness for people. Family Day Classic always is really well attended, fantastic turnout. So I would recommend registering early if you are interested in that tournament. I'll chat quickly about two more pieces, I promise, and then I will continue moving. Free Soccer Friday. What is Free Soccer Friday? Well, Free Soccer Friday is an accessible drop-in soccer opportunity for kids to go and play. Someone's going to say, there's no value for my kid there. They play PDL, or they're Tier 1, or they're this, or they're that. Well, I want to explain some common themes around talent development. Worldwide research on talent development has common threads around mixed age play, around unstructured environment, and around access to facilities. Free Soccer Friday provides all of that. So while this is an inclusive soccer offering for anyone to come and play, regardless if they can afford to, they can't, their age, their social status, whatever it is, it's also a talent development scheme. And we're also trying to connect the community, both players who are involved in the sanctioned game, that might not be, that aren't aware of it. And we owe a ton to Service Credit Union for sponsoring this event and really making this event possible. The upcoming dates are there on your screen in terms of the Calgary Soccer Centers hosting the next three. And then I think it starts to bounce around a little bit again in the coming, back stages of Q4 of this year. If there are adverse driving conditions, CMSA games always go ahead unless the city of Calgary has closed the roads due to winter conditions. Okay, so you don't need to shoot us an email. You don't need to call the office. This is the policy, right? Unless the roads are closed, we still play. All right. and want to make sure that I acknowledge that so that people have an awareness here on the call. Key piece. I've asked you for one call to action in terms of evaluating the program handbook against your club's registration package. I would ask you for a second call to action tonight. This is maybe the most important call to action that we have right now, and it's around Fields for Our Future. This is our advocacy campaign around trying to secure more facilities for Calgary and for soccer at the end of the day. Because our current state is that we are essentially out of room. The indoor games at capacity, and we are experiencing unbelievable growth in soccer year over year right now. So what we don't want to have happen is to put up a no vacancy sign and start to have to cap tiers or cap age groups, because then kids are missing out on playing. It's that simple. We anticipate quite a large growth rate potentially after the World Cup, and we're genuinely worried and concerned. And so in 2025's outdoor season, there was almost 500 games that were rained out. And some of those games could have been played in covered facilities if there were more. The season prior was 220 games were rained out. Okay, and that's without any sort of smoke. That's just due to rain. So what is this campaign for? Well, we need government support to be building field houses, to be building domes, to be building structures to house soccer in. And we also want to enhance the existing infrastructure that we do have to bring it up to the modern standards of the game so that players do have a quality experience when they go there. We're also looking to try to increase the amount of collaboration we have with the city so that soccer has an input into the design of these spaces and that we receive a proportionate access to these city-owned soccer spaces. This is a key piece. And so the campaign impact and progress as of April, we haven't updated this slide yet, but this number needs to improve. It's that simple. Only 5% of our database has signed up. So on this call tonight, that means that there's about 20 odd of you that haven't even bothered to sign up. And listen, your kids might be U17, U19, aging out of the youth game. This doesn't just affect their playing. This can affect their coaching. This can affect their adult leagues. This is going to affect their children. Okay, so if we do nothing and we sit idly by because maybe our kids are getting older, my opinion, not good enough. So we need to be active here. You'll see that our social media campaign has been fairly effective. We've been engaging with tons of government officials and prospective counselors here in your municipalities to be ensuring that soccer is top of mind when they are elected. We've been all over the news media as well, and we continue to work on advocating and building out business plans to demonstrate both the need and the opportunity. So what are we asking of you? We're asking for you to find something with a camera that has the ability to follow this QR code and to sign up as a supporter. This is dead simple. You punch in your email, you punch in your postal code, and the system sends you an email saying, we need you to send an email to whoever your elected representative is. Click here. You click, the email is auto-generated. If you love it, you click send. If you want to tweak it, you tweak it or add to it or whatever, and you hit send. It literally can take you 5 to 10 seconds to be a voice in this movement. And trust me, the more voices that there are, the stronger it's going to impact council and the stronger case soccer has to building more infrastructure. Okay. I'm going to come up for air for a second. There's a question in the chat about no soccer pro teams in Calgary. There's 2 pro teams in Calgary. Cavalry FC, which competes in the Canadian Premier League. All of those players are full-time professionals. They actually have a game tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at Atco Field down in Spruce Meadows. and Calgary Wild FC, our women's professional team in their inaugural season in the Northern Super League. And they have a game, I believe, on Saturday at McMahon Stadium. So now that you know, I'm anticipating that you're going to be out at one of those two games this weekend looking to support them, which is fantastic. The league structure. League structure looks like this. If your division, your tier, your age group has more than 15 teams in it, or anywhere between 9 and 14 teams in it, or less than 8, you're going to get 14 randomized games. Someone on the call right now is going to say, well, that's not fair. That's not fair that they're just randomized and that team might get an easier schedule than us. You're right. You're totally right. That's not fair. We have sat with all of the clubs for ages and gone back and forth with this, that we say, well, okay, no problem. Do you want us to cap these tiers and age groups so that it is either 8 teams and it's a double round robin schedule, or 15 teams and it's a single round robin? That's the only 2 options you have. And they say, well, no, there's 10 teams that are kind of in there. So we say, okay, no problem. Do you want exhibition games? Or do you want just 14 randomized games? And they say, well, the exhibition games, parents always hammer us that they don't mean much. And why are we playing exhibitions? We don't pay for exhibitions and this and that. And they moan and complain. Well, great. Then we do 14 randomized games. And the clubs go, okay. Now it's about you as parents having that information and restraining on sending the email come February when maybe your team isn't in a Challenge Cup spot or isn't in a provincial spot because they had a slightly harder schedule, or harder schedule, if you will. Okay? We are in a 7v7 format for all the games. We are actively trying to get these older age groups into 9-a-side formats. That doesn't happen without advocating for Fields for Our Future and looking to build additional facilities. Okay, so we need your help with that. It's a non-negotiable piece in our mind. You'll see a Challenge Cup at the end of the year. Okay, you will also see not 3-person referee crews. That's a copy and paste error from the outdoor presentation, but you will see 2 officials, as I've already mentioned, on all games. Okay, not just tiers 1 to 3, on all games. And so I want to talk quickly about how CMSA builds the schedule. Okay, here's what we do, and I know it's a little bit blurry on your screen. We ask all the clubs to put in all of their teams from U7 to U19, and that happens in early September. They put them all into the system, and then we start to organize them into whatever age group and tier that they put them in. We then bring all of the clubs together, literally into one room, all of the technical leaders, and we put all of the divisions up on the wall. And we say, right, what teams should not be in that tier? Or do you want to move some teams based on now seeing this tier and going, woof, I remember these groups a bit, or my coaches have informed me that we don't really want to be there anymore. We're going to move them over here. We give the club leaders that autonomy to both hold themselves accountable, but also to make decisions on what's best for the players and for their groups in their club. Because if I can make it out to 1% of games, that means I made it out to 50 games in a year. And in a season like this, when I think there's 6,800 games being scheduled, we need to rely on our club leaders and the knowledge that they have to be helping us to produce these divisions. Okay, we then finalize things and send it back to the clubs to say, right, have you missed anyone? Are these in the right spots? Need you to have a look at this. And we give them a couple of days to look that over so that they can get it right. Then what we do is we bring in the field permits that are very random, okay? They are all over the place at best. And we look to try and match up division sizes with fields, with locations so that if Blizzards are playing Rockies, that they're not at the Calgary Soccer Center, that maybe we can host them in the Northwest because that's where all of their parents live. And we try to build that schedule all while manipulating it by hand. Someone's going to say, well, why don't you just dump it into a computer program, hit go, and then it's good to go? Well, we would love to, but it doesn't typically work like that. Okay? We have to still manipulate it by hand, and it's a time-consuming process. And we've got two wonderful women in the office that spend countless hours to try and hammer out this schedule as quickly as they can and be as detailed and accommodating as they can. And it's unbelievably upsetting when, as soon as the schedule gets released, the inbox explodes with people complaining and moaning that the schedule wasn't good enough for them. I want you to have a think for just a second. With over 1,000 teams and 6,800 games and about, 18 to 20,000 players in indoor, that if you've got a couple of unsavory kickoffs, is that really the end of the world? Is that really that big of a deal? Think about the size, the scale, the scope before you want to write in a nasty email and be incredibly disrespectful, which we've gotten over the last week. Okay? Then, obviously, teams want to travel to tournaments, and you've got to provide reschedules, and we've got to rejig things throughout the year as well. So that's an ongoing process. Obviously, as the season closes down, then we look to do it all again for the next season. Okay? So that is how that schedule is made. And that is how we do it at CMSA. If someone thinks that they are a worldly expert at this, we're happy to listen to you. We are happy to hear you out and to provide a wonderful solution if you've got one. Okay. Melissa's prompted me that there's some questions around age exemptions in the chat. So I'm just going to zip back. Sorry for just give me one moment. Let me just make sure I find that age exemption piece. There we go. So we'll talk quickly about age exemptions then, and then I'll go into the chat to find the questions as well. Formerly, this was called biobanding. So your clubs might still use that language. We've been forced to change it to age exemptions due to an insurance company understanding of what biobanding is and what it is not, and that differentiating, or sorry, that being different than our intention and what we were using it for. Really, age exemptions are a player placement strategy that helps clubs to accommodate players and their physical maturation, maybe their mental maturation, their social maturation, as opposed to constantly fitting them into the box of, well, they're this age and they were born in this year, so they must play here. This is a player development and a player placement scheme that works around the world because soccer is a late developer sport. So if we've got players that are maybe developmentally behind, we need to find solutions to keep them in the game, to keep them developing through the game, and to make sure that they have a great experience. So what we have is we have a process of how we do this. And we've modified and amplified that process for this upcoming season. We're asking the clubs to do more work. We're asking them to be really specific and thorough as to who they are age exempting and why they are age exempting them. So the club goes in and fills out a form and submits a development plan to us, where I will literally spend all day tomorrow going through 130 odd development plans that have been submitted and looking them over and seeing which clubs are actually invested in this, which ones are doing this properly, and which ones are just doing this as a scheme to keep the player at their club and not find them an appropriate home. Because the expectations really are around clubs doing the right thing around this and not just putting players down tiers or down age groups as ringers to win games. The clubs get held accountable to that anyway, and they get called out anyway within the Club Connect. So that's the expectation. Okay. Our process in terms of age exemptions is as follows. This is what we will be evaluating. The club will obviously submit the application. We will literally look at, is there another team at a lower tier within the same age group, in the same club, that could accommodate this player? it's a yes or no question. If there is, well, you need to submit the development plan to CMSA, and we're going to have a good hard look at that as to why that player needs to be age exempt, not maybe given opportunities in a lower tier. Okay? If there isn't, that club doesn't have a team that will accommodate that, well, is there evidence that the club has made reasonable attempts to find another club at the same age group that maybe can accommodate that player? So this isn't about clubs just trying to keep registrations at their club. Again, a yes or no question, right? We want to see that correspondence. We want to see the effort that the club's gone through to then rule that out and say, maybe there isn't an opportunity for this player to move into another club or another team. Okay? That comes in with that development plan so that we can evaluate and monitor what these players are actually doing and what the club's plan is. Parents are signing off on these plans to say, yes, that's okay. This is what we're signing off on. Away we go. And it's our responsibility as much as the clubs to then follow up. Okay? If that isn't there, then it's not approved, and it's really as simple as that. I'm going to maybe dive into the chat here because Melissa's just prompting me to see this. I had to play a tournament against U15. Is in alignment with the rest of the world. That's very kind of you. We really try to be in alignment. I can't wait to hear why some clubs that we play against have a pass. We run a team that's running on the rules that is fair. I'm looking forward to hearing back from you on why. I would suggest that our option is that there should be no age exemptions. Listen, if you feel like that, no problem. You can start up a soccer entity and you can have that be a core tenant of your soccer entity. No issue. We're choosing to take a very inclusive approach that is research-backed, that is available around the world. So I'm not too, fond of the sarcastic comments in the question. And if I'm brutally honest, that's not respectful dialogue within this forum. More than happy to connect with people offline about this if they have enormous issues with age exemptions and how they see the process being modified, because the age exemptions are not going away. It's that simple. When you can sit in this chair and when you come and work for CMSA, you can make the decisions, and I'm fine with that. But right now, that's not going away. So players can move down an age group if that's deemed what's right for them. We don't give clubs any sort of pass on this. In fact, we hold clubs and our club leaders to incredibly high standards. They don't get free lunches, unfortunately, and they are being pushed more so now than they ever have in this Calgary soccer ecosystem. Not by myself, but by the standards and the expectations that are put upon them. So I want to be really clear here. Age exemptions are a tool that, when used appropriately, provide phenomenal results. Can people use them inappropriately? Yes. We have mechanisms in place that will deal with that. So if you feel unfairly treated, that other teams have got age exempt players, you feel like there is a massive competitive advantage for them, let us know. I'll come sit at the games and watch, because I get the luxury of seeing exactly which players those are, and I'll watch them. In fact, we did that in outdoor with some of these groups, where I went 2 games and it was against the top team in the league against third from bottom. So you would expect that those age exempt players would be dominating the third from bottom team. You know what? Pretty even, pretty equal. In fact, had I not had that sheet in front of me, it would have been difficult for me to tell which ones were the age exempt players in that game. So this has been a process that's been modified significantly. And you can read all about this in our rules and regs if you want, and then have a contextual conversation with us offline that's respectful in terms of dialogue. Fitsum, to answer your question, we do actually have play-ups, and players can play down in certain age groups across open rosters. So again, other player development processes and ideas that are making the game more flexible, more bespoke to the individual player to develop through, because I'm seeing constant communication in this. How do we get scouted for pro opportunities? Well, listen, if we want to be really linear and put kids in boxes, your opportunities become very limited or more limited. These are the realities. And if you want to start to express how we don't align with the rest of the world, well, clubs like Tottenham have policies where players play in their age group 70% of the time. They play up an age group 15% of the time. They play down an age group 15% of the time. So let's not talk about us not aligning to the rest of the world. You have access to the Canada Soccer Grassroots Standards. You have access to the IFAB laws of the game. You have access to a wealth of information on YouTube from Belgium, from England, from Germany, from Korea, from Brazil, from Morocco, from Japan. All of these development frameworks, I want you to go and do your research and see where we differ and where we don't align with Canada Soccer, and where we are not trying to align to what best practice would look like. Okay, so if you've got specific concerns, I cannot wait to see that email. Okay. Our 7v7 goal standards that we are going to have for this indoor look as follows. They're 6x18 foot goals, and that's what you will see in those 7v7 fields across the facilities. Okay, so you can expect to see those 6x18. It's standardized. Our field sizes are as standardized as we can possibly make them, aside from a few meters difference between Macron and Shane Holmes and Shouldice and such. Okay, we left off the presentation here where we spoke about the scheduling. Provincial qualification, obviously there's provincials for the 15s, the 17s, the 19s, where it's around the league winner will be the automatic qualification. And the Challenge Cup winner will also be able to be heading towards the ASA provincials in March. People go, why don't we just send the two best teams from the league? Well, we went through a process of removing the provincial qualification from the league through the PQCC. Some people hated it. Loads of clubs loved it. They were all about the PQCC. They loved the format. They were really sad to see that go. But the Challenge Cup has moved in, and really this is an acknowledgement that youth players have good days and they've got bad days. And so if you lose your first 2 or 3 games of the season, should that mean that you're a bad team and you're bad players and that you should be out of contention for the ASA provincials? Our view is no. They should have some opportunity to show that they are the best team. So the Challenge Cup is what that mechanism is. You'll see that U14s and 16s, they don't lead to the provincials, okay, and they don't have an opportunity to challenge. You may also see teams that are playing up an age group, they can challenge into their own natural age group. Okay? All of this is outlined in our rules and regs. Very clear. I want you to pay attention, especially if you're from a club that is not residing in Calgary, to this here that I'm highlighting on the screen. We have a ton of angry, venomous emails that come in at the end of a season saying, you're depriving our kids of an opportunity in the Challenge Cup. Well, I want to be really clear. If you're in Cochrane, Airdrie, Springbank, Okotoks, Chestermere, Strathmore, Lethbridge, Canmore, Red Deer, Cold Lake, you don't qualify for provincials through CMSA. Therefore, you're not included in the Challenge Cup. You qualify through your own district. So reach out to your district. If you're in Airdrie, reach out to Airdrie Soccer. If you're in Cochrane, Big Country. If you're Springbank and Okotoks, Foothills District, and so on and so on. They have a way that you qualify for provincials. Okay? We are now champions on this call again, so the angry emails don't need to come in at the end of the season. Lots of people ask for transparency. A key piece in our survey feedback. We want transparency. Where does all the money go? It's on your screen. This is the per player fee that CMSA collects from the clubs. Okay, it's broken down on your screen. On the right-hand column, you'll see the ASA fee. That is what CMSA provides to Alberta Soccer on a per player basis. Okay? That's what we keep, is $214.50. Okay? The price per match day is $15.32. It's actually cheaper than the 12s and 13s on a per match day basis, but don't tell the 12s and 13s, okay? That's what stays within CMSA. Now, someone's going to say, poof, that is a ton of cash, $214.50 per player. Holy smokes, CMSA must be rolling in it. Well, let's explain where these fees go. The majority, and when it should actually say the vast majority of the fees go towards booking fields for games, paying referees, and other league-related expenses, just running the league. There's a part of the fees that contribute towards future facility projects and upgrades, like the Shane Holmes West Soccer Dome renovation that is a 11-a-side FIFA Pro quality turf pitch and the only one in Western Canada. And a new Shouldice bubble that's, not new, but it's there. And it goes up every winter so that we have another facility to utilize. A portion of the fees go as a donation to Kidsport, because Kidsport kick in about $1 million into soccer every single year in terms of fees and fee assistance. Okay, so we're trying to make sure that that system is sustainable so that sport and soccer is accessible for all. As I've mentioned, portion of the fees go to Alberta Soccer and Canada Soccer. We don't even see those, they just get forwarded on. And a small portion helps to pay for the CMSA staff that try to ensure that Calgary Soccer is efficiently run and continues to innovate, and that we continue to try and move the game forward. Okay? That's the transparency. The curtain is open. You're seeing how the sausage is made right now. Okay? In terms of ASA Insurance, this is if there's an injury or when there's an injury, really. You have to go and see a doctor and get a doctor's note or a diagnosis. That is vital for the insurance process, okay? You fill out the form that's on Alberta Soccer's website. I believe we link it as well, but if we don't, then find it on Alberta Soccer's website. That form has got to be filled out within 30 days of injury. The process is if you have personal insurance, you use that first. Then the Alberta Soccer Insurance kicks in after the personal money runs out. Okay? Physio and rehab expenses add up incredibly quickly, as I'm sure a lot of us on this call know. And it's important that you cover yourself or encourage your players, if you're coaching, to be filling out this form within that 30 days of injury. Okay? Really, really, really vital piece. So make sure that you know that and have an awareness about that. As we wrap things up, more than happy to stick around for additional questions, but I just want to acknowledge this image that I leave a lot of my presentations on, that we have a beautiful ability to pull this game forward at an incredible rate when we're on a similar page. We don't need to be ever on the same page because we're not all thinking the same, and groupthink is not a valuable thing. But when we're all pulling in different directions, we're not going to go far enough or fast enough. Okay, so we can go far enough and fast enough together. And if you've got comments, if you've got questions, if you need resources, if you have issues, crises, tumors, concerns, whatever it is, that's our contact info on the screen. We're more than happy to be transparent, to hop on a phone call, to explain rationales, to look to help. What we will do is we might say, hey, this is a club issue. You got to go talk to your club about this. So don't be surprised if that does happen. But I also want to say thank you to everyone who's been on this call tonight, because you could have been anywhere in the world doing anything, and you chose to spend some time understanding, having conversation, asking questions, and being curious. So thank you. You're probably wily veterans in this soccer ecosystem here in Calgary, and the fact that you're still showing up is a testament to the investment that you have, and I'm grateful for that, and I respect you all very deeply for that as well. So thank you very much. You can follow us along on any of those social accounts and probably a couple more. And like I say, we look forward genuinely to seeing you on the pitch. And if you see me floating around the facilities or centers, feel free to come and tap me on the shoulder, introduce yourself, and have a conversation. Typically, I'll have a small child with me or on my hip, but they're used to dad talking lots, as you can probably tell by tonight, and they're used to dad being around the fields and having conversations with people. So more than happy to engage, more than happy to have conversations. And I really genuinely wish everyone here on this call the best for indoor 2025-26. And I look forward to seeing you on the pitch. As I said, I'll stick around for a few moments to answer any other questions that might come in through the chat, and look to provide some clarity. There's some requests to get out and watch some games. Really, the clubs are the ones who put the disputes in for that when they have issues. So I'd encourage you, if you have issues with another team, please work through your club, and they will be able to filter that upwards, I guess. Player waiver form is asking us to agree on liability waiver, even there is a negligence on the CMSA or club side. That's very vague, if I'm honest, and I'm probably not in a position to answer that question. There's two things I don't touch. It's governance and discipline and money. I guess that's three things. So not my specialty. But if you feel like there is concerns or you have concerns with the waiver, please shoot us an email with those concerns, and we're happy to discuss those concerns with you. What I would say about our waivers is they are reviewed by lawyers. They are approved by lawyers. They are vetted. And so while I'm not a legal expert and I don't play one on the internet, I would assume that if lawyers are signing off on it, that it probably is a legal document. Again, I'll keep sticking around for a few more minutes. Even if you're typing out a really long question, just type in wait or something like that, and more than happy to hang out and see what that question is. You can obviously tell we're passionate about the game, we're passionate about what we do, and we're driven to make sure that it moves forward. So you know, we're happy to have our ideas attacked and scrutinized and questioned, and our you know, concepts. As long as we can have respectful dialogue, more than happy about that. Any thoughts about extending the outdoor season until October? It's a great question, and no problem, Salman. I'll wait around. Listen, the weather's still good enough right now that we could be playing outdoors, right? When I was running and coaching in the Rex program, those players would be outdoors until about mid-November. Typically, some years there would be snow at Halloween and we would have to move in a little bit earlier, but that was typically what their kind of schedule looked like. I want you to consider what the overall calendar looks like with questions like extending an outdoor season into October. We have provincial competitions that happen in August. We have club nationals that happen over Thanksgiving. So if we are looking to extend the outdoor season past the provincials, well, there's a few things that would need to happen. There needs to be a player transfer mechanism and window so that if players are looking to move, that they can move into APDL environments that start up in September. There needs to be a season end and a provincial qualification that happens before August. And there would also need to be an acknowledgement that those teams competing in October weren't ones going away to club nationals. So it's a complicated question. In terms of thoughts about extending the outdoor season, plenty of thoughts. We constantly go back to what the calendar looks like and the schedule looks like in an effort to continue to make it better and refine it. It's not clear cut though, and it requires a lot of moving pieces to be able to make those changes. For instance, I'll give you some insight into how the U13s were transitioned from a provincial championship competition into a 9v9 format, and also then subsequently the U13 divisions province-wide. That was done through a process of gaining consensus across all the districts in Alberta, and there's 19 districts. So CMSA spearheaded that and went around to all of the districts explaining the benefits, gaining support, and then having that vote passed at an Alberta Soccer AGM. So this is not a process that really happens overnight. This is major structural change to the soccer environment and ecosystem, but these are pieces that we are considering. These are things that we actively work on. And these are things that we explore in order to try and make the game better. So it's a great question, which is really forward thinking, and I applaud you for thinking that way. I noticed in the chat earlier, someone had mentioned Edmonton is playing 11 aside. I would be amazed if any Edmonton age groups are playing 11 aside. If they have, I've missed it. Typically what you're going to see in Edmonton is tier ones will play 9v9, maybe your tier two as well. Everyone else plays boarded. Okay, so we've made a conscious choice to be moving the game forward into the modern era and trying to get out of boarded facilities. And you can look back on news articles on the literal day that we announced the opening of the Shoaldice bubble. EMSA and EDSA, which combined makes the Edmonton Soccer Association in terms of facility piece, ESA announced a $30 million expansion for 2 indoor boarded fields. So you saw directly on that day the game moving in 2 different directions from 2 major centers within this province. And we believe, along with the club support, that boardless soccer is where the game is going and where we need to be focusing on. So we're actively trying to remove all boarded games. Obviously, we're not at that place quite yet, but we are constantly trying to make those steps forward to remove the boarded game. Okay, so no problem, right? We're believing also in equality in terms of formats for players, not just that our deemed good players, our tier 1 players, get to play in a 9v9 format and everyone else gets boarded. We don't believe in that. And it's fine if Edmonton does. I don't mean to come across negative or slagging them off as it might seem, but it really is just a philosophical difference in where you see the game going. Okay. There's a question around concerned about 7v7 for higher age groups. We need our players at this age to work as a team. Yeah. 9 aside would be a great format. I can't wait for someone who's really passionate about seeing 9-a-side happen, to sign up for Fields for Our Future, to be advocating for more facilities, to be really pushing for additional facility development. Because listen, we're talking right now about capped programs potentially and no vacancy signs at a 7v7 level. Us expanding to 9v9 means instead of 4 games going on one pitch, you get 2. Okay? To do 9-a-side properly in a 45 by whatever the width of the field is, usually it's 65-ish, you get 2 games going on. So what does that mean? Well, that means smaller divisions. That means less players. That means less teams in those divisions. Or it means we need more field inventory to be able to expand that capacity. And the question, around 9v9 or 11v11 bi-weekly rather than weekly games, this is an option. Okay, my question would be, think about if you've got 14 games now in a 7v7 context, but you're losing half of that field time. Well, are you comfortable paying for maybe 7 or 8 games across a 7-month series, or like calendar, really? Season was the word I was looking for. 8 games over a 7-month season, where the price per game, if we just roll it back to here, instantly doubles. Potentially. I'm not sure. Right? I'm not sure. And we want to try to provide value. We would think that having a 12 or 13 or 14 player roster in a 7v7 format is going to provide more minutes on the field and more touches on the ball within that game format than carrying an 18-player roster in 9v9. So even that, from a match format, from a player development standpoint, 7v7 could, and I use the word could still be a useful format at that time. But we really want to make sure that, as there's a comment there, that's literally what I was about to say, that we want to ensure that the kids are playing, right? We want to ensure that they're playing, that they're not just sitting on a bench all the time. So you'll see clubs that are starting to shrink their roster sizes come indoor and throw in 11, 12, 13 kind of player rosters. That's great. Like, that's okay. It poses difficulties for us from a scheduling and a field allocation and field inventory perspective, but from a player's perspective, like, that's all right. We would love to. Like, we want nothing else. Melissa could vouch for me if she wants. Monthly, at most, I am advocating internally of, like, how do we get to 9v9 and indoor? How do we do it? Can we do it? What do we need to get to? What do we need to remove? What do we need to add? Like, we are dogs with a bone with this stuff. Okay? So the alternative, right, is haves and have-nots. And we're not choosing to philosophically go haves and have-not. Okay? It's a great question then. Why did we play a provincial final as a boarded game against Scottish? Very disadvantaged. They said they were following the ASA rules. So it's a great question. So when ASA SGMs and AGMs come around and we're sorting out what the provincial formats look like, there's obviously a bit of give and take with that, right? With Edmonton playing 9v9 and boarded, but we play 7-a-side across the game. Well, let's think about what you need to do to try and satisfy the room. All of the rural districts play boarded soccer because that's the infrastructure that they have. So naturally, your tier 3, your tier 4, your tier 2 could potentially be into a boarded format because there's a large volume within the province still in those areas that play boarded soccer because they haven't built bubbles. They haven't developed field houses. They just haven't done that work. Okay. So it's nuanced, right? And it's not just about boarded, boardless. It's about trying to fit the needs of the overall province. And sometimes Calgary gets left out of that. We get left out of that. Question there about why aren't we aligned? CMSA has different rules. I don't know if you're talking about the laws of the game. I don't know if you're talking about our rules and regulations. I don't know where the misalignment that you're talking about is. Adding context to that would be great if you could. Why do APDL clubs get to play 11v11, lower teams don't? APDL teams play 9v9. Okay, so they play 9v9 through their winter period. That's what they play. Okay, so they will put 9v9 games onto thirds of fields. I want you, the next time you're at the Shane Holmes West Soccer Dome or Macron Performance Center or Calgary Soccer Center Dome now, I want you to pace out how big those fields are, those thirds. And I want you to see if that is in alignment with Canada Soccer's grassroots standards for a 9-a-side format. You can even Google, if you want, what other FAs, what other federations are playing 9v9 games on in terms of a field size. Then I want you to make your own evaluation there. Okay? I'm sorry, I'm still not understanding the context there in terms of Alberta versus Calgary. If you're referring to the rule set that Alberta Soccer puts out in terms of laws of the game, and you're referring to the modified laws of the game that Calgary puts out, once again, I would ask you to go through things like the Canada Soccer Grassroots Standards, evaluate that against the Alberta Soccer laws of the game that they put out for boardless or for boarded soccer. And I want you to tell me how aligned they are. I'd love for you to find in the Alberta Soccer copy things like pass-ins or dribble-ins or retreat lines. When you do, would love to hear about that. If you can't find that, then I would love for you to ask the next question of who's aligned and who isn't aligned. Okay, so again, we are in Calgary. We are, this isn't an ego piece. We are well ahead of the rest of the province, probably well ahead of Western Canada within a lot of these pieces in terms of modified laws of the games and innovating within the game. Well ahead. And so what happens when you're the first one through the wall? Well, you get a little bloody, unfortunately. We wouldn't be living by our values if we weren't leading. And so we are choosing and making a conscious choice to be leading the change within the game and to really be trying to make it better for the players locally. My role is not to be making the game better for all the players in Alberta anymore. My job and my role is to align the game and work on the game to make it better for the players here. So again, I'm not going to be the QAnon misinformation, the whatever, but you can do your research, right? And you can see where the alignments are in terms. More along the lines of why we have to play against teams that are 2 years instead of 1. I think this is still age exemption related. Please clarify if it is or if it isn't, because if it is, then more than happy to continue this discussion all night, and if you like, or we can hit pause on that and we can always connect offline.
Jordan,
totally up to you. Yeah,
I think that one is more of the fact that we have single year age groups and a lot of Alberta is double year age groups.
Right. So yeah, so we can definitely talk about that. Edmonton organizes their age groups. U15 Tier 1 would be their typical older age group. Their U15s in that. Then they'll go U15 Tier 2 is their U14s. I don't know why we can't just call it U14 and U15. In fact, if you ask your clubs what they prefer, you'll get an answer. Right? The clubs that I communicate with and the clubs that sit at the Club Connects, they prefer single year age groups. It's actually really difficult on them to be having double year age groups, especially on the girls' side, where, yeah, you do have mixed age in the same league. And these are some of the necessities that persist within our ecosystem. Okay, if there's a chance, Robert, send me an email. More than happy to connect and have a conversation about this, because this seems like a big issue for you, and more than happy to try and help work through it and involve any other people that we need to in order to figure this out as well. Question as well in terms of how many facilities does Edmonton have to run their 9v9 league? I'm not sure. I no longer live in Edmonton or work in Edmonton. What I would say is that the East and West and South Soccer Center are all boarded fields, much the same as what the Calgary Soccer Center main building would look like. 4 boarded fields in there. You've got Spruce Grove with 2 boarded fields. You've got Sherwood Park with 2 boarded fields. You've got St. Albert with 2 boarded fields. You've got Leduc with 1 or 2 boarded fields. I think Beaumont maybe has a boarded field. Then in terms of full covered bubbled structures, you have places like the Edmonton Garrison, which is a rubberized surface that you can host 11v11 games in up at the military base on the north side. You have got Edmonton Victoria, which is a club that has a 7-a-side field and a 9v9 field there that's covered. You've got the U of A campus foot field that's a bubbled 11-a-side field that's predominantly used by the U of A football and is incredibly difficult to get time in. You also have Edmonton Scottish for the Edmonton Soccer Dome, which is an 11-a-side pitch. And theirs is actually big enough that they have 3 regulation 9v9 fields in that dome. And I'm struggling to see any others in my mind right now that are up there. So to answer the questions, they have more teams that just play boarded soccer. That's how they make it work. So we're choosing not to go backwards to boarded soccer. This isn't, 1985 anymore. It's not 1994. We're choosing to continue to move forward. Okay, so that's likely how they make that work. APDL so expensive. Melissa's answered that. Do you have a comparison between Calgary and other cities like Vancouver, Montreal, which have pro teams playing in MLS in terms of youth development strategy or methodology, so that Calgary strive towards having their own pro team similarly? Well, Calgary has a pro team, the Cavalry FC. Calgary also now has a full-time U18 professional academy that's starting up for U18 male players within the city. The Calgary Wild offer, I'm not 100% sure how many days a week it is this year, but it was 2 days a week last year in terms of their girls academy program. The Vancouver Whitecaps here operate a 3-day-a-week boys and girls program that takes place at the Shane Holmes West Soccer Dome. So in terms of youth development strategy or methodology, we have a incredibly high per capita population, or per capita, for National Youth Club license holding clubs that meet the highest standards of youth amateur football in Canada, located here in Calgary. We've got a fairly developed amateur grassroots football environment here. So in terms of youth development strategy or methodology, what I would say is start with your own club. Ask them about what their methodology looks like. Ask them to show you their methodology. Ask them to show you what the proof is that they're helping players' development and showing progression. Is it a detriment that Calgary doesn't have an MLS team located here? Calgary is the second largest city in North America that doesn't have an MLS team. So someone might sniff out an opportunity, but you also have to look at what the minimum attendance or average attendance is for MLS to even look at you, which is a little higher than what Cavalry are pulling right now. So when we think about access to competition is really where the MLS question comes in terms of MLS Next, in terms of competitions like GA Cup and things like that. We're talking about resources, really. And if you critically think about it, there's a pretty strong reason why the Whitecaps have such a vested interest in being in Edmonton, in being in Calgary, and being in Lethbridge. Okay? I would encourage you to maybe go on to the Vancouver Whitecaps U15, U16, U18, U17, all of their team rosters, and see where those players are from. What you'll find is that a large percentage of players are coming from Calgary and Edmonton onto those male rosters. A very good percentage on the female side are going into the Vancouver Rise Academy from Calgary. So in terms of, youth development and methodology, I don't think that we do a poor job. I think we do actually a pretty decent job. Can we do better? Without question. There's a lot of things that would have to change here in Calgary for things to, I think, help develop more players. This is things like not having little super teams at U9 and all the players flocking to the best teams in U12 and 13 and 15, because then they don't have anyone to play. Then the level of competition, the level of talent is so concentrated that where the development is in the training environment, there's no point in playing in a league anymore for them. So there isn't that external stimulus as well to help them. So we do all right here in Calgary, and the clubs here do a pretty decent job for not having a local MLS team here. Because if we want to have an MLS academy team or an MLS Next team, it's about $1 million a year per team. So say we have a 15s and a 17s, it's $2 million a year. The money's got to come from somewhere. Okay, so that's the realities of it. And we in Canadian soccer are incredibly fortunate to have people like Greg Kerfoot at the Vancouver Whitecaps that fund an enormous amount of youth development within this country, and are trailblazers, honestly, in this country in terms of trying to give Canadian youth a chance. Then you layer on top of that Cavalry and their U18 program, and give the CPL's mandate of having under 21 minutes. There's chances coming for young Canadian male players. The women will be no different. They want local Canadian players into these pro clubs. So there's opportunities there that are being built out. From my understanding, EPL is not expensive considering year-round. It's also a next-level program. I believe it's providing a neater pathway for players to get scouted to professional level. Listen, pro clubs will take players from wherever they come from, right? They look for talent. They look for players, whether they're at a national youth club license or not. They want talented players. Okay, so the only scouting ground is not the APDL. Okay, Chris works exceptionally hard to connect in with the clubs, to get out to Tier 1 games, to be watching Tier 2 and Tier 3 games from Northeast Calgary teams that maybe they don't have a Tier 1 team. Maybe Strathmore only has a Tier 2 team and goes and watches them, right? They're about finding the best talent and then nurturing the best talent and giving them an opportunity. So the scouting piece, I leave it like this, and I really truly believe this. When you're good enough, the game finds you. Okay? When you're good enough, the game finds you. Because pro clubs have people working all over the place, across the world. And part of their mandate and job and part of the business of football is to develop players and sell players on. And so they have a vested interest in finding the best players and trying to nurture them. Player development is not linear, and no one has a crystal ball, so you don't know what you're getting. And this is what I mean. If one year you're playing in the APDL squad, the next year you're in the tier 1, maybe you're in the tier 2, and then you bounce back up, like wherever. That's okay. That's okay. And we need to be comfortable with that. This is not a I'm here, I stay here, and then I just go upwards. That doesn't happen. Okay, it's not like school where you go from grade 7 to grade 8 to grade 9 to grade 10. No, sometimes you go from grade 9 to grade 8 for a little bit, and then you go to grade 10 and you go to grade 9. Like that happens in sport. Does Cavalry have a younger youth? No, they don't have a younger youth program at all. So they obviously in a league like the CPL, and I don't want to speak for Cavalry, but I could imagine what resources kind of look like, and you have to be strategic about how you allocate your resources and where you're going to focus your time and energy. So typically what has happened here in Calgary is the Whitecaps will look at the players kind of up until U15, and then Cavalry and Whitecaps are cooperating amongst that then the ones that Whitecaps say, you know what, maybe they're just not ready for us yet, or we're going to take these ones instead. Well, there's opportunities within Cavalry FC as well, and it's a beautiful time. It's honestly the best time in Canadian soccer to be a young player coming through. The amount of opportunities that are here now didn't exist a decade ago. So this is literally the best time to be a young player playing in the game that there ever has been. So the opportunities are abundant compared to what they used to be. Okay, so the youth have plenty of chance now, or multiple chances as well. And listen, just because players don't make a Whitecaps, a Cavalry, a Wild FC, a whatever academy, doesn't mean that they don't go away to a university or college or something and come out the other side of that and then get looked at for a professional opportunity. There is no linear journey. I play in a men's tournament in Saskatoon every May long weekend, and while I'm there, I'm watching players. I'm looking at players. Guys that used to play in Romania and Russia are there playing against me. And I'm like, whew, this guy can play. He's obviously out of contract because he's slumming it here in this men's league tournament in Saskatoon. But I'm picking up the phone to Pacific, to Cavalry, to York, and going, I think there's someone here. So again, when you're good enough, the game finds you, and you get opportunities. So focus on getting good enough. Okay, that was a lot of me rambling, and Melissa's probably gone to sleep now at this point. So I'm going to should have a page for the links to all these opportunities for training and high performance coaching. Salman, it's a great awareness. This is something that I'm currently working on in terms of a more detailed explanation of what this all is, and trying to tie it together into a resource for people, and to provide help and guidance with this. So not in terms of a formal pathway, like you start here and you end up here, but in terms of this is who operates at these certain ages, stages, levels, etc. Much the same way that it will be a more representative of this image that's on your screen, right? So that player pathway piece, and what that looks like. So I am currently working on that, and you should look to see something probably in the new year around this piece. Yeah, another question, no problem. I'm going to fall asleep here, though, if it hits 10 o'clock. That's when my biological clock just shuts off and my circadian rhythm comes in. Do I personally rate clubs, or does CMSA rate clubs? We I guess I'll answer it too. Yeah, so CMSA, CMSA doesn't rate the clubs, so to speak. CMSA ensures that clubs have valid club license, that they have a membership affiliation on file with us, and that we review that membership affiliation with them. But we don't rate them. Okay. We know that the realities, club to club to club, vary significantly. And we have an incredibly diverse population of clubs. So it's really difficult for us to then say, right, here's a whole bunch of criteria, much the same way as club licensing already has, to then rate, a bicycle compared to a Ferrari, right? And I'm not saying that clubs are Ferraris and they're amazing high-performance machines. I'm not implying that. All clubs have, I think, room to grow, as does CMSA. But to have a set standard and rating system to compare those two things is really difficult, other than, do they have wheels? Right? So hard to rate them. What I would encourage parents to be doing is asking good questions. Ask good questions around, what does your club believe in? How do your coaches work? What sort of safe sports standards do you have, and what sort of policies do you have to protect our kids? What sort of training and development do you do with your coaches? What do you believe is more important, winning or development? How do you go about balancing those two things? What's your retention rate like in your club? What's your attraction rate like in your club in terms of players? Who progresses from your club? How are you developing better citizens from your club as well? What sort of leadership opportunities do they have? Do you support multi-sport? Can my kid go skiing or play on the school volleyball team and not face the coach's wrath of saying, you got to pick one or the other? These are important questions that people need to ask, but I'm not sure if they feel comfortable asking. So you need to ask these questions of your clubs, and you need to see if that environment is right for your child, and you need to involve your child in these conversations and have really open and honest conversations about your child's motivations in sport. Okay, so I hope tonight hasn't been just a rambling sesh, and I hope that there's been some golden nuggets that people have taken from it and have been able to then feel better prepared and more informed for the upcoming season. Okay, as always, more than happy to connect with people. Okay, so please, I'll leave it just up on the screen in case you haven't taken a screenshot and you're curious and want to reach out. I'll leave these methods of communication up. If I could share the screen again, there you go. Right, so that'll be available. We're here for you. We're here to talk with you, and really appreciate the questions and the conversation. I love the engagement. I love people that have invested the time. So thank you all very much, and I wish you all a good night. So thanks, and we'll see you at the pitch this year.